listen to this audio. A lot has happened to us all since 1987. That's the year The Art of the Deal was published and became the best-selling business book of the decade, with over 3 million copies in print. Business rule number one: if you don't tell people about your success, they probably won't know about it. A few months ago, I picked up The Art of the Deal, skimmed a bit, and then read the first and last paragraphs. I realized that after 17 years, they still rang true. I could have written these words yesterday. First paragraph: I don't do it for the money. I've got enough, much more than I'll ever need. I do it to do it. Deals are my art form. Other people paint beautifully on canvas or write wonderful poetry. I like making deals, preferably big deals. That's how I get my kicks. Last paragraph: don't get me wrong. I also plan to keep making deals, big deals, and right around the clock. It's now 2004. I'm still making deals around the clock, and I still don't do it for the money. I don't think you should do it for the money either. Money is not an end in itself, but it's sometimes the most effective way to help us realize our dreams. So if you've got big dreams and you're looking for a way to make them happen, this audiobook is for you. How to Get Rich. That's what I decided to call it, because whenever I meet people, that's usually what they want to know from me. You ask a baker how he makes bread. You ask a billionaire how he makes money. Sure, there have been countless how to get rich books written by millionaires. Billionaire authors are harder to find. Billionaire authors with interests in real estate, gaming, sports, and entertainment are rarer still. And billionaire authors with their own Manhattan skyscrapers and hit primetime television series are rarest of all. I'm pretty sure I'm the only one, though Oprah could give me a run for the money if she ever decides to write another book and get into real estate. Business rule number two: keep it short, fast, and direct. The following will be straightforward and succinct, but don't let the brevity of these passages prevent you from savoring the profundity of the advice you're about to receive. These stories and words of wisdom have been distilled from almost 30 years at the top. So here it comes, the scoop from the dunno. After you make your first billion, don't forget to send me a thank you note. You know the address.
Simon & Schuster Audio presents Trump: How to Get Rich by Donald J. Trump with Meredith McIver. Read by Barry Bostwick with an introduction by Donald J. Trump.
Part 1. The Donald J. Trump School of Business and Management. Be a general. I am the chairman and president of the Trump Organization. I like saying that because it means a great deal to me. There are almost 20,000 members of this organization at this point. I did a print ad once in which I declared, "I only work with the best." That statement still stands. More and more, I see that running a business is like being a general. Calling the shots carries a great deal of responsibility, not only for yourself, but for your troops. Your employees' lives, to a large extent, are dependent on you and your decisions. Bad strategy can end up affecting a lot of people. This is where being a leader takes on a new dimension. Every decision you make is an important one, whether there are 20,000 people working for you or just one. If you are careful when finding employees, management becomes a lot easier. I rely on a few key people to keep me informed. They know I trust them, and they do their best to keep that trust intact. For example, when I need to know something about my casinos and hotels in Atlantic City, I know I can call up Mark Brown, my CEO, and get a fast and informed answer. If I call Laura Cordovano over at Trump Park Avenue and ask about sales, she'll give it to me exactly as it is. If I call Alan Weisselberg, my CFO, he'll tell me what I need to know in 20 words or less. My senior counsel and apprentice advisor, George Ross, can do it in 10 words or less. Find people who suit your business style, and you'll have fewer problems to deal with as time goes on. Good people equals good management, and good management equals good people. They have to work together, or they won't work together for very long. I've seen good management get by with mediocre people, and I've also seen excellent people get stuck in the mires of bad management. The good managers will eventually leave, followed by the good workers, and you will be left with a team that gets along because they're all mediocre. Save yourself time by getting the best people you can. Sometimes this can mean choosing attitude over experience and credentials. Use your creativity to come up with a good mix. Creative people rarely need to be motivated. They have their own inner drive that refuses to be bored. They refuse to be complacent. They live on the edge, which is precisely what is needed to be successful and remain successful. One of my former employees was in charge of a new project. He had done a thorough and acceptable job, but I felt that something was missing. It wasn't fantastic, which, knowing his capabilities, it should have been. I decided to challenge his creative ego by mentioning that it was fine, but seemed to lack inspiration. I politely asked him whether he was genuinely interested in the project and suggested that perhaps that might be the problem. Well, the guy went ballistic on me. He was deeply insulted. And as you can probably guess, the revision he turned in was terrific. The difference between the first draft and the final version was incredible. I didn't slam the guy because he was usually demanding of himself and had never let me down. But I had to give him a jolt. Generals motivate their soldiers. They inspire them when it is necessary. They do the same for the highest-ranking officers. We all need a boost now and then. Learn how to tailor your method to the personalities you are managing. Keep the big picture in mind while attending to the daily details. This can seem like a balancing act, but it is absolutely necessary for success in running a company. Stay focused. In the 1980s, I was riding high. After learning the essentials of real estate development from my father, Fred, a builder in Queens and Brooklyn, I'd become a major player in Manhattan, developing Trump Tower, the Grand Hyatt Hotel, and many other top-tier properties. I had a yacht, a plane, a best-selling book. One magazine headline said, "Everything he touches turns to gold," and I believed it. I'd never known adversity. I went straight from Wharton to wealth. Even in down markets, I bought properties inexpensively and made a lot of money. I began to think it was easy. In the late 80s, I lost focus. I'd fly out to Europe to attend fashion shows, and I wasn't looking at the clothing. My lack of attention was killing my business. Then the real estate market crashed. I owed billions upon billions of dollars, $9.2 billion to be exact. That's $9,200,000,000. I've told this story many times before, but it bears repeating. In the midst of the crash, I passed a beggar on the street and realized he was worth $9.2 billion more than I was. I saw a lot of my friends go bankrupt, never to be heard from again. The media had me for lunch. Forbes, Businessweek, Fortune, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, they all published major stories about my crisis, and a lot of people seemed to be happy about it. I'll never forget the worst moment. It was 3 a.m. Citibank phoned me at my home in Trump Tower. They wanted me to come over to their office immediately to negotiate new terms with some foreign banks, 3 of the 99 banks to whom I owed billions. It's tough when you have to tell a banker that you can't pay interest. They tend not to like those words. An ally at Citibank suggested that the best way for me to handle this difficult situation was to call the banks myself, and that's exactly what they wanted me to do. At 3 o'clock on a cold January morning in the freezing rain. There were no cabs, so I walked 15 blocks to Citibank. By the time I got there, I was drenched. That was a low point. There were 30 bankers sitting around a big table. I phoned one Japanese banker, then an Austrian banker, and then a third banker from a country I can no longer remember. In The Art of the Deal, I had warned readers never to personally guarantee anything. Well, I hadn't followed my own advice. Of the $9.2 billion I owed, I'd personally guaranteed $1 billion. I was a schmuck. But I was a lucky schmuck, and I wound up dealing with some understanding bankers who worked out a fair deal. After being the king of the 80s, I survived the early 90s, and by the mid to late 90s, I was thriving again. But I learned my lesson. I work as hard today as I did when I was a young developer in the 1970s. Don't make the mistake I did. Stay focused. Maintain your momentum. William Levitt, the master builder of Levittown, taught me the true meaning of momentum. In the 1950s, he was the king. No detail was too small for his attention. He would personally collect stray nails and extra chips of wood from building sites to make sure his construction crews used all available materials. He sold his company in 1956 to ITT for $100 million, which is equivalent to billions today. Then he made some terrible mistakes. He retired. He married the wrong woman. He moved to the south of France and lived on the Riviera with his new boat and his new wife. One day, ITT called. The executives in charge of the conglomerate had no aptitude for home building. They had bought huge tracts of land but didn't know how to get them zoned, so they sold it back to Levitt, who thought he'd gotten a great deal. He went back into business, and he proceeded to go bankrupt. I saw William Levitt at a cocktail party in 1994, 2 weeks before he died. He was standing by himself in a corner, looking defeated. I didn't know him well, but I approached him hoping to acquire some wisdom from the master. "Mr. Levitt," I said, "how are you doing?" "Not good, Donald, not good." Then he said the words I'll never forget. "I lost my momentum. I was out of the world for 20 years, I came back, and I wasn't the same." No matter how accomplished you are, no matter how well you think you know your business, you have to remain vigilant about the details of your field. You can't get by on experience or smarts. Even the best surgeons need to be retrained regularly to stay current on the latest research and procedures. No matter what you're managing, don't assume you can glide by. Momentum is something you have to work at to maintain. Get a great assistant. Surround yourself with people you can trust. I often say it's good to be paranoid, but not when it comes to your home team. Ask God for a great assistant. No joke. A great one can make your life a whole lot easier, or in my case, almost manageable. Norma Forderer has been with me for 23 years. If you want to know what a great guy I am, just ask her, but not on a Friday. Handling me, the office, and several hundred calls a week isn't easy. She's as tough and smart as she is gracious. She's also indefatigable, which helps a lot if you work for me. My phones are so busy that I require 2 executive assistants, and they never stop. They alone handle, on the average, more than 1,250 calls a week. They are not only efficient and fast, but they are also very pleasant and beautiful young women. You don't have to be beautiful to work for me. Just be good at your job. I've been accused of admiring beautiful women. I plead guilty. But when it comes to the workplace, anyone who is beautiful had better have brains, too. You need competent people with an inherent work ethic. I'm not a complacent person, and I can't have a complacent staff. I move forward quickly, and so must they. Once I wanted to know how fast a new employee could work, so I told him I was leaving in 15 minutes and needed something done within that time. I wasn't actually going anywhere, but sure enough, I had what I needed in 15 minutes. Machiavellian? Maybe, but both of us learned something that day. One final piece of advice on assistance, which I learned from experience and which, I admit, may not be as relevant to your career as it's been to mine. Find a receptionist who can speak English. We had a breathtaking European beauty out front who could easily rival Ingrid Bergman in her heyday, but I discovered that her ability to recognize well-known people in the United States was limited to myself and maybe President Bush. She wasn't so familiar with the likes of Hugh Grant, Reggie Jackson, George Steinbrenner, Jack Welch, Paul Anka, Mohammed Al-Fayed, Regis Philbin or Tony Bennett. Their calls never got through to me, and their names were placed on her psycho list. And you should have seen it. What a night. She's since moved on to better career opportunities, but we'll never forget her. Neither will anyone who ever called in, or tried to. Remember, the buck starts here. Set the standard. Don't expect your employees to work harder than you do. In my case, I don't have to worry about that because I work 7 days a week and love almost every minute of it. But also realize that your company will sometimes function as an extended and dysfunctional family. It's only natural, considering that people often spend more waking hours with co-workers than they do with their families. A visitor in my office once mentioned that the goings-on there reminded him of a family fight in progress. I will admit that the volume level gets high now and then, and he wasn't far off in his assessment. But if you want smooth sailing every day, move to the Mediterranean. Winners see problems as just another way to prove themselves. Problems are never truly hardships to them, and if you haven't got any problems, then you must not have a business to run. Regard your company as a living, breathing organism, because that's what it is. Those figures you see on your spreadsheets will reflect the health of that organism. Watch out for bad cells while allowing good cells to flourish. Growth is an indication of life, so keep your organization moving forward at all times. Having a passion for what you do is crucial. If you can't get excited about what you're doing, how can you expect anyone else to? If your employees can see and feel your energy, it is bound to affect them. Don't intimidate people. If you do, you'll never get a straight answer from anyone, and you'll be defeating your own purpose. I keep my door open, and my people know I'm available as well as approachable. We don't have chat fests, but whatever needs to be done gets accomplished, and quickly. Remember that your organization is your organization. That sounds simplistic, but bottom line, it's your ballgame. The strategy is up to you, and so are the results. Remember Harry Truman's famous words, which he kept on his desk in the Oval Office? The buck stops here? I keep a similar quote on my desk. It reads, "The buck starts here." Don't equivocate. If you equivocate, it's an indication that you're unsure of yourself and what you're doing. It's also what politicians do all the time, and I find it inappropriate, insulting, and condescending. I try not to do it. Fortunately, I don't have to try too hard at this one because I've been known to be on the blunt and fast side at times, which is good. I once asked an executive in my organization to give me a synopsis of a new development we were considering. He'd been to the city in question, had spent some time there, and had done some careful investigating. He went on to describe the merits of the site, the pitfalls, the good things, the bad things, the pros, the cons, on in great detail. He must have talked for 10 minutes straight. Judging from what he was telling me, there were just as many reasons to drop the project as there were reasons to jump right in and get going. It was like a tied game with no overtime. I asked him more questions, and we ended up exactly where we were before. He was on both sides of the fence at once, and didn't seem to want to take a stand either way. This guy had a lot of experience and a good track record, so finally I asked him what he thought of the project in 10 words or less. "It stinks," he said. He had 8 words left, but he didn't need. Ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, is there anyone else who can do this better than I can? That's just another way of saying know yourself and know your competition. If your competition is better than you are, you need to offer some quality they lack. Number 2, what am I pretending not to see? We can all get swept up in the euphoria of a creative moment, or what former President Richard Nixon's speechwriters used to call the lift of a dream. Before the dream lifts you into the clouds, make sure you've looked hard at the facts on the ground. Bullshit will only get you so far. I think it's funny that the phrase most closely associated with me these days is, "You're fired." Because the truth is, although I've had to fire people from time to time, it's not a big part of my job. I much prefer keeping loyal and hard-working people around for as long as they'd like to be here. There's a wonderful lady in her 90s. Amy Lewerson, who worked for my father and still reports to work every day at our Brooklyn office. Here at the Trump Organization, Helen Raycox has worked for me from the day I moved to Manhattan, and she still puts in long hours every week. She is 82. Once I delayed firing someone for 2 years because this guy always had such a great line of bullshit every time I came close to the topic. No matter what was going on, he had some huge deal lined up that was just about to come through. He managed to string me along for 2 solid years, and I believed him every time, or wanted to. Finally, I was forced to realize that his claims were bogus, but I gave him every chance before finally axing him. Unless your boss is a total sadist, he or she doesn't want to fire you or cause hardship to your family. If you think you're in danger of being fired, take control of the situation and ask your boss for a meeting. Make sure you ask for the meeting at the right time. Tell your boss you want to make sure you are communicating and doing your job to everyone's satisfaction. Of course, if your boss is a sadist or just a lousy communicator, you've still got a problem. In that case, fire your boss and get a better job. There's no sense in trying to cope with a bad situation that will never improve. I never try to dissuade people from quitting. If they don't want to be here, I don't want them to be here either. No one has ever come to me with an ultimatum.
400 yards.
People see how it works here, and if it doesn't suit them, they move on. Sometimes it happens quickly. A qualified and experienced receptionist worked here for a grand total of 6 hours. She realized right away that the pace just wasn't suited to her, and she very politely told us so and left. I appreciated her quick thinking and efficient decision-making skills. She'll have a successful career somewhere else. Every new hire is a gamble. Some people give such great interviews that you're ready to make them vice presidents on the spot, until you realize that their true talent is simply giving a great interview. That's why, in a sense, every new hire is a gamble. Impressive credentials don't always add up to a great performance or a good fit. Non-existent credentials don't necessarily mean a no talent. Being circumspect helps a lot and keeps you from being surprised. People can offer an interesting mix of pros and cons. Time will do the weeding out for you. All you have to do is pay attention. What I look for in employees is a sense of responsibility that goes beyond what is merely sufficient. Some people do the bare minimum, and some people will actually be concerned about the organization as a whole. They see themselves as having a direct relationship to the success or failure of the company they work for. They believe they are important, and their work shows it. If you can instill this sense of worth in your employees, you will have a tip-top team working for you. People who take pride in their work are the kind you want to have around, and the kind I like to keep around. I especially like employees who spend, and more importantly save, the company's money as if it was their own. Companies suffer when employees don't make enough of an effort to control costs. The employees who feel a personal responsibility for their budgets, who view the company's bottom line as an extension of their own personal savings account, are often the ones who get the best results. If you let your boss know that you're watching out for his or her bottom line, you'll always be appreciated. I respect employees